This video is brought to you in part by the patrons of the Lazy Eyebrow, and from the comments and watch time from viewers like you. Thank you!
Good job, Ramhorn. You did it. What? Ramhorn is evolving! Huh? Hey, Billy. Oh. Hi, Ripple. Wanna play? My dad said I can't hang out with you. Why? He said all Decepticons do is murder, pillage, and plunder. Well, I'm not gonna do that. I know, but I don't even know what this dumb war is about. I say we say forget it and run away, somewhere where they'll never find us. You think we can do that? Yeah, we'll go to a new planet. We'll call it Paradron 2, and nobody will ever tell us what to do again. Oh, all right. Let's go. Billy, no! Wow. You know, you really gotta admire that. Such bravery, such courage. I don't think I could ever be more proud of my... Decepticon! Cliff jumper, no!
Why hello YouTube, greetings from the Lazy Eyebrow to the counterpart from the video from 3 uploads ago. This is the video review for MechFansToys Emitter, another entry into the legend-sized world of Transformer collecting, also sent in by Zach Dane for review.
Well, hi there! This video was finished, like completely finished, and I was in the middle of doing a thumbnail when all of a sudden I found out this was actually an oversized KO and not the official release of anything. My bad. So basically, what I'm trying to say is whenever you hear me say MechFansToys did a good job, what I really mean is Magic Square did a good job. I'm sorry, this is totally on me, but instead of redoing an entire review, I thought this was the easiest way to get that information out there without causing a lot of pandemonium in the comments, as I know a lot of you would do that, and justly so. So anyways, with that being said, keep that in mind, and on with the review!
Again, normally I don't cover the box, but I am today because I think it's worth noting. Look at the artwork for the head. In both instances, here he's displayed with a toy-accurate flip-up blast shield nose guard as well as the yellow eyes. Considering what we're about to look at, I think this is at least a little bit confusing, don't you? And interesting to note anyway. Anyway, taking out the box, we find that Emitter comes with far less accessories than Magic Square's Soundwave did, but he also comes in alt mode, so let's get to that. This stereo is probably one of the most accurate looking takes on Blaster's alt mode that I've ever seen, short of having the G1 in hand. Just everything is so clean looking. I mean, I have a few gripes with it, but for just a second, can we appreciate how amazing this tape deck looks? Like, just from images alone with no reference to sizing, one look and it's like, yep, that's G1 Blaster in plastic, just like he looked in the cartoon. Like, I just can't get over how great this looks at first glance. On closer inspection though, here's what I do have an issue with. On the front, these panel lines don't line up, and I don't exactly understand why. Like, it looks like they were supposed to, and honestly, even if they weren't supposed to, aesthetically, it just looks weird that they don't, and it's just such an easy fix. Like, in the program this was designed in, all they would have to do is move this collection of vertices up, this collection down, adjust the paint, and aesthetically, this would look infinitely better. At the end of the day, I get it's a minor inconvenience, to the eyes at best, but it's still something I noted. On the back, though, this isn't great. Like, the arms are back here just chilling out. The toes just hanging off the back as well, though that's a little less obvious. Like, compare that to the last figure covered. And now, that wasn't the best arm storage for a Soundwave either, but even so, that was handled a lot better than the arms just hanging out here waiting for someone to pass him a relay baton. And then you compare it to something like Unique Toys Sound Mixer, and it's like, alright, what's your excuse here, Emitter? Especially when both pull off the front so nicely. Sound Mixer obviously having a lot more going on aesthetically, but hey, at least his panels line up. The one thing Emitter has that Soundwave doesn't is button articulation. On the front, he has movement for the play button and the eject button. These, of course, don't do anything, but it's neat they move. The rewind and fast forward button are locked together and are a really stiff pin that's shared at the tape door that also opens. It only goes so far, though, with the buttons in a realistic position, but of course everything moves further than that to get you more clearance for the one tape he comes with. Unlike Magic Square that comes with 2 tapes, Emitter comes with 1. Ramhorn. For those wondering, Ramhorn can fit in Voice Ripple, but Ripple's tapes don't work in Emitter, and I can understand that, 2 different companies and whatnot. I'll admit, though, it's a little disappointing. Anyway, let's talk about Rhyhorn for a bit. He's your standard thing that turns into a rectangular block, but this one features a Rhinoceros head on the outside. Either way, his transformation works by turning the whole thing inside out to show all the rhinorific detail. From there, the legs fold out, and then 2 parts of a head fold out, and here's your legend scale Raiden. Honestly, he's not a bad little robo. Like, compared to Magic Square's weird-looking Ravage, here's a really good take on a really tiny cassette that turns into a quadrupedal animal. I mean, it's lacking a tail, which sort of makes sense. If it had have been molded into the hinge joint here, it would have meant sacrificing some of the aesthetics on the missile pods, and if anything's going to get sacrificed, the tail is probably the better option. I don't know, in general, I think they did a really good job capturing the look and feel of a tiny Rhyperior. And bonus, because of the transformation, you can animate him getting split in half or something. Something else he can do with the whole half-splitting thing is get all flat-like and looks like some family crest at the House of Rhinox. In short, this Legend-scaled tape is kind of fun, and probably about the least fiddliest of all the Legend-scaled tapes I've dealt with this month. Anyway, let's put Ramby into a tape mode and we'll get back to Emitter. For size comparison, a LEGO minifigure, my custom-built minifig blaster, Reveal the Shield Jazz, Unique Toys Sound Mixer, Magic Square Voice Ripple, G1 Ricochet, Siege Soundwave, and finally, Earthrise Optimus. So that was the tape deck mode. Honestly, aside from the arms just hanging out in the back there, this is a really solid take on the tape deck mode. And I'm surprised that nothing like it has even really been attempted before beyond a third-party Masterpiece version, and even then, I feel this looks and feels a little better. Anyway, let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor, and we'll head right into Transformation.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Oh, darn it.
What's wrong, Prime?
I'm trying to buy more of our Autobots from online retailers, but it's just too dang expensive.
Have you tried allmatrixdfm.com?
No, as a matter of fact, I haven't. What is it?
It's an online marketplace devoted to the sale of all things Transformers based out of the United States. Prices are cheaper there as the selling fees are lower than prices like eBay, but because they still use PayPal, you get the same buyer protection as you would on eBay, with free shipping on all orders within the US.
That sounds pretty good. But what if I have something just taking up space around here and I want to sell it?
Well, you can do that too. Account creation is free, and any sale or order you make enters you in a giveaway on the site.
That sounds awesome.
allmatrixdfm.com. Go start selling today for free.
We now return to the Transformers.
So on to Transformation. First, break apart the handle and point it up. Break apart the legs and point them out. On the legs, open up the feet, rotate the feet forward, flip out the toes, and close the feet. Take the red panels and fold them in half, and then fold it into the leg. Then position the handle on top of that. Bring out the arms into basically a T-pose, so we can then take these front flaps, flip them up, spin them around, and fold them back down. Open the back up, bring out the head, and we're done. And man, would you just look at this thing. Like head to toe, this thing just screams the very image of a G1 blaster. You got the gray, blocky legs, the speaker shins, the red upper body. Just, man, does this thing ever look great. Not just in static poses either. The way the thing moves is so dynamic with articulation just about everywhere to really pull off some good-looking stances, or even some ready-to-battle poses. As for scale between these two figures, though, it's good. Not perfect, though. Again, two different companies in a non-standardized scale, so I get it. But if we're looking at the height comparison chart that Mike Lorber did, we see that these two should really be the same height, give or take a few scaled centimeters. Meanwhile, Emitter is almost a full head taller. Is it the worst thing to ever happen? No, not by a long shot. Honestly, I feel it's close enough that this makes very little difference, but I felt it was worth mentioning. Also worth mentioning is the lack of the soft, toonish aesthetics that Voice Ripple was all about. Look at this. You get sharp lines, a little bit of beveling around the edges. Like this. This exactly is what I want out of these robots. The overly humanoid aesthetics and the curvy nature that I see mixed into these things really drives me for a loop sometimes. But the way they sculpted Blaster here, man, this is just more or less a perfect representation of a G1-esque blaster in toy form. Clean front, clean legs the whole way around, very clean back. Like no matter what angle you're looking at this thing, it's really achieved a level of G1 blaster that no other toy really has in my opinion. It's just a pity it's so small as next to nothing exists for unit classification scale aside from a third-party figure that was really going for style points way back in 2013. Articulation features a ball-jointed head that looks the whole way around and a massive cut to the back of the head for full range of movement upwards, which means if he ever flies like Superman, he can really look straight forward, which is pretty neato. Shoulders are the same story for the ball joints, which allow for a good range of movement. Bicep swivel and elbow gets a double bend. Basically, he can really get his teapot game going. Wrist can swivel, waist can swivel, and the abs can crunch. Though the placement of the crunch is so weird that it's basically useless. It's like right at the base of the waist, which means the difference between a crunch and leaning forward is negligible. Speaking of leg movement, you get this far unless you adjust them butt flaps, then you get the full movement in both directions. Full thigh swivel, knee bend at 90 degrees, but the shin to thigh ratio makes the superhero landing a little difficult to pull off. Finally, ankle pivot that goes the full 90. Like, look at that spread with the only ground contact being the feet. This is insane. I think it's absolutely ridiculous the amount of articulation they're putting into these Legends figures. And handling them, it makes me kind of sad that nothing even comes close in the unit claceration scale, or chug for all you normal people. Like, when I was getting back into collecting, I had to make the decision of which scale I was going to collect this time. And Legends scale was a serious contender. Like, the lower weight and the higher quality from these third-party figures makes these quite easier to balance and rig. Like, for comparison, you get a Legends-sized deluxe Cliffjumper that holds pretty much any pose you put it in. Deluxe-sized Datsuns are basically the same way, and well, for the most part, that applies to all deluxe sizes. Once you start getting into the Voyager and quote-unquote leader sizes, the weight of the figure starts becoming something you really have to take into consideration in terms of what pose this thing is going to hold when you go to animate the figure. Combiners and Generation scale really start becoming a chore to animate due to the weight and most of the joints being designed for Deluxe and Voyager size, and then you hit Titan class and you just want to throw your camera at a wall. And considering Masterpiece scaled Combiners are basically Titan class, you can see my point. So in terms of animating, there's kind of a spectrum of size. On the one side, you have super small. The size makes rigging and positioning really easy, with not needing a ton of space to film. But the small limbs really make things fiddly, ergo, not fun. And on the other end of the spectrum, really large figures are very easy to maneuver their limbs and extras and pose them and whatnot, but the size makes rigging and balancing a challenge. Not to mention the requirement for a lot of space for your figure so it can move. At the end of the day, finding that sweet spot for yourself in scale comes down to personal preference and what your circumstances will allow for. Man, I sort of feel like Goldie Brown in the 3 scales. This Soundwave is too big. This Soundwave is too small. This Soundwave is just right. Anyway, on to accessories. So aside from the Legend-scaled Tunnel Rhino, he also comes with his iconic rifle, and this is actually exceptionally well sculpted. It looks exactly like it did in the G1 toy and box arts of old. And I'm sure somewhere in the Season 2 and 3 cartoon he used it, but I honestly can't remember any time he actually did unless it was Headmasters or Twincast. Regardless, I think it looks pretty good, and with it you can get him into all kinds of different poses, like pointing and shooting, and who could forget the classic pointing and shooting. Now, this was the rifle that came in the box. There was also another one that came in a little bag. This one is clear for some reason. Is it made of ice? Is it supposed to be out of phase with reality? Does it reference some comic I'm unaware of?
Hey, Blaster, you weren't thinking of using that, were you?
Maybe.
Can you give me a good reason not to? Well, I'm glad you asked. I wrote a song just for this occasion. You what?
Oh. I already don't like the sound of this one. Oh, blue screen inducing. My favorite.
Please don't use your crystal rifle, oh Blaster.
What?
The love you deny is the key that will melt the lock.
Love? Who are you?
Our golden shining spirits will all join hands and sing. Please don't use your crystal rifle.
No.
Please don't use your crystal rifle.
I'm not agreeing to nothing.
Don't use your crystal rifle. Blaster.
Shut up.
For size comparison, Magic Square Voice Ripple, G1 Astrotrain, HO Scale Jazz, which is kind of funny because normally it's the inverse sizing, other figures from MechFansToys that are clearly for the Uniclacerations line, Siege Mirage and Smokescreen, Earthrise Optimus, and Thrilling 30 Jetfire. And there you go. There's something else that scales halfway decent. Like, Blaster and Optimus should be about the same size, so it looks as though if we were to scale the figures on the left up to the ones on the right, they would scale proportionately. And I mean, even when you take the Jetfires hold figures of said scale above their heads, it just works, doesn't it? So there you have it, Legend Scale collectors, a new use for Thrilling 30 Jetfire. So that's been my review for MechFansToys Emitter. Like, it's an exceptional figure with lots of great things about it. It looks great in both modes, the articulation is just top shelf, and it's about the best take I've ever seen on a G1 blaster. Again, it makes me ask why we can't have these things in the scale where there's way more characters. I don't mean to say Legend Scale shouldn't have this or anything, but like, I would be thrilled if the companies making this would take their existing CAD files, upsize them by about 30 or 40%, and bam! We have ourselves the best blaster for unit classerations line that's ever been seen, because as it stands, the only option we have is a Cybertronian one, a Masterpiece stand-in, or this hard-to-find third-party one that apparently nobody has heard of, and frankly, I think Blaster deserves more. This has been the Lazy Eyebrow.
Hey everyone, Lazy Eyebrow here, trying this whole video outro business. If you liked the video, it would mean a heck of a lot if you could like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, please visit my Patreon, where every supporter on the Patreon site gets free access to the videos a little bit early. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 3 days, depending on how ambitious I'm feeling. Another announcement, Armatrix.com is hosting these. They're little keychains for shipping within the US. I'm still working on distribution in Canada. It's just my logo. There's a Decepticon version on the site as well. Just shipping outside of my borders is really difficult, and Armatrix.com was gracious enough to host the US shipping side of things. So if you live in the US and you want one of these keychains, there's also a Decepticon version there. I can't remember if I said that or not. Feel free to visit their website and order your own. As for the Canadian side, we'll figure that out pretty soon, I hope. This has been Lazy Eyebrow.